You're watching 7 Action News at 10 on TV20 Detroit.
He's an icon and broadcasting legend, and we've lost the king of Detroit TV news. Bill Bonds died this afternoon after suffering a heart attack at his home. He was 82.
Where do you begin with Bill Bonds, right? A Detroit native, a great newsman, a man of wit and intelligence. Bombastic, yes. A showman, definitely. But he cared about this city and its people, and it came across to viewers each and every night.
Our longtime colleague, Eric Smith, looks back at the career of Bill Bonds.
Good evening, everybody. Dangerous weather conditions exist right now, so keep an eye.
At times, he was almost larger than life, and at times, life proved to be much larger than he ever thought it could be. For some 30 years, he ruled the Detroit news scene with the God-given gifts of intellect, style, passion, and an unfettered ego. He was the king of Detroit TV, and he knew it.
Well, whatever you do, you little pilgrims, you don't tear down Billy's throne. That's the way it is around here at Channel 7.
Like so many who came before him, Bill cut his first news teeth in local radio. Then in the mid-1960s, he was summoned to his ordained destiny in television.
Dr. King's standpoint, wouldn't it be virtually impossible to economically boycott Alabama without the participation of the Teamster Union?
Then in 4 frightful days in July 1967, fate intervened. As buildings burned and gunshots rang out in the city streets, Bill Bonds became the voice of the nation's worst urban riot.
We said it couldn't happen here. Things were too good, but it did, and the nation was shocked.
He was the information lightning rod, sorting fact from rumor, truth from tragedy, life from death. They were called the days of madness for good reason, and they changed Bill Bonds and local news in Detroit forever. It was not long before Bill and the Channel 7 news team had become the city's #1 choice for news and information. Bill's reputation had begun to grow beyond Detroit, and it was not long before New York and Los Angeles were calling. He went for a while, but in the mid-1970s he was back where he belonged. The king came home, and his subjects paid homage once again, making him #1 for many years to come. The success came with a price tag, of course. Bill became the highest-paid local news anchorman in America. The paper said he made over $1 million a year, but the money and the fame came with other costs.
You do some damn stupid, destructive things when you're drinking.
I know it did not come as a great surprise to you that I am an alcoholic.
Alcohol became a best friend, and unfortunately traveled too often with him in the car. Ultimately, his friend in the bottle was able to do what no other media competitor could do. It dethroned the king. We had grieved with him when a drunk driver took the life of his daughter. We had laughed with him when he challenged Coleman Young to a fist fight. We had shared the jokes about his toupees. We had watched him trade barbs and hurl questions at the high and the mighty.
Look, I go through enough crap back here. I don't have to go through it with you. Well, let me tell you something.
No, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something.
No, you tell yourself something. I'm tired of talking to you.
Okay, fine. I'm tired of talking to you.
And then one day, it was just suddenly all over. It would never be quite the same at 5, 6, or 11. Yes, the king fought back and came back, this time without his friend in the bottle. His commentaries, once the meat of the lion, seemed to have lost their punch on the MTV generation. Soon after, he reappeared as a paid spokesman for a local furniture store. The ads were empty reminders of another, better time in the king's reign, when the blue eyes and the staccato delivery heralded moments of importance in our city's history. It was often said, in good-natured jest, that Bill Bonds was a legend in his own mind. Today, as we mark his passing, it must be said that Bill truly is and was a legend in his own remarkable time. He was my friend. He was my teacher, and for a time, a mentor. I shall miss him. The king is dead. Long lived the king.
And Eric Smith joins us now. Well said, my friend.
Well, you know, it's a difficult day. Billy and I go back over 50 years. It's a long time to have a friend. And passings are part of, I guess, growing older, and it's never easy. And I can just, remember a million memories, and all of them fond. Bill and I used to do the weather. For a while I was doing the weather at 6 and 11 when Jim Smith had a heart attack, and we managed to go out every night and talk about the news over a glass of milk and toast. And
of course.
But Bill was just too dynamic to be contained in one city, and yet this city loved him. He went away, as I did, and we all came home.
Yeah.
And you told us at 6 o'clock that when Bill was hired here, you originally said, this is a mistake.
Yes, absolutely. Bill Fife was the news director here, and we had a very small staff. Lee McNew, Dave Dials, and Pat Morris did the weather, and I did most of the writing. But Bill Fife said, I'm going to hire that Bonds kid. He's a goer. I said, he's a pain in the And I said, you don't know anything about him. I said, he's got an ego that goes forever. And he said, well, I'm going to hire him, and he did. And Bill and I have chuckled over that story for years. But
it was a different time back then, Eric,
too,
when you look at TV news, I mean, there was a time, I think, when it was like half of anybody watching television at 5 o'clock at night were watching Channel 7.
Yeah,
I mean, they didn't have the options that they have today, cable and so many things. So everybody knew Bill Bonds.
Well, actually, when Bill started, you saw a little bit with Dr. Martin Luther King there and some other things. We didn't even have film cameras when Bill started. Wow. I was paying a guy by the name of Dick Weiss $5 to take a Polaroid picture of a fire and bring it in, and we'd take a picture of one of the cameras. That's how far we've come. It's silly. That interview with Dr. King, Billy just blew in there and took over, and that's what we did. He led the charge. But later on with Benny Marshall and just Jim Harrington and the people. It
became a powerhouse, yet Bill was still the driving force, wasn't
absolutely. He demanded excellence, no matter what you did. I know as a reporter out in the street, you trembled in fear after your report because Bill was bound and determined to ask you a question that you hadn't covered in your piece. And boy, you better be prepared.
Right. My sister wrote for him. Jackie worked in the newsroom, and she wrote for him, and she would say, I mean, just the fear of death, that never to get anything wrong, because if he walked out of here saying who wrote this, you knew you were in trouble,
But that was the demand that put us, I think, into the #1 position in this town and where we've stayed for so many, many years. Excellence, period, was demanded from our bosses, and Billy just carried that same torch. Diana, we've all grown up here. I'm kind of one of the last of that early generation now, and it makes it even more difficult for me to see Bill pass. But we lost Phil Nye, who was one of our news directors, and another driving force this year. So, we're all getting more mature.
Yes.
That's the way to say it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For the look back at Bill's career and for your comments here, Eric. You remain very, very special to all of us.
Well, I was blessed to have a wonderful friend for 50 years. He taught me an awful lot and demanded much of me, and I think I did the same to him.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Thank you, Eric.
All right,
very much.
Eric Smith joined us on the set here, remembering Bill Bonds, and we continue to remember the king of Detroit TV news with 7 Action News reporter Ross Jones.
He joins us live outside Broadcast House tonight, where Bill Bonds worked for so many years. Ross?
Joanne, Dave, good evening. You're right. We are outside Broadcast House, which is in many ways the house that Bill Bonds built. He was an indelible figure, not just in Detroit television history, but in Detroit history. Tonight we spoke with 2 of his longtime friends, Diana Lewis and daughter Glenda, about how big of a loss this is.
He helped mold my career. He influenced my person as a woman. He was just so well-versed on so many topics and subjects. He was so well-read. He impressed me with every day. He had something different to say that would make a difference in the way people receive the news, how the news should be presented. He cared. Bill Bonds cared so much. And I just feel privileged, privileged to be the first woman to ever sit down beside this man on the anchor desk. Boy, did I catch hell. Oh, yeah. I had to take him head on. I caught hell, and at the end of it all, we would hug, we would kiss. I just learned so much from him.
If it wasn't right, he wasn't going to do it. And he wasn't going to say it. And if it didn't benefit people, then there was no reason for him to do it. You know, he had the characteristics of a journalist. If you looked up what a journalist should be, from the heart, from the mind, and from the soul, he embodies that.
You simply cannot overestimate or say more about what he did for this business and the number of careers that he is in many ways responsible for, mine included. I would not have gone into journalism were it not for Bill Bonds. We will have much more coming up on 7 Action News at 11 over on Channel 7 with our conversation with Diana and Glenda. For now, outside Broadcast House, I'm Ross Jones, 7 Action News.
I taught people how to ask the tough questions, that's for sure. Thank you, Ross.
Watched him as a kid growing up and had the privilege and pleasure to be able to work with the man. Very, very special indeed. Bill's last big public appearance was at the local Emmy Awards in June of this year.
He took center stage to accept the prestigious Governor's Award for Lifetime Achievement from the Michigan chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Science. His breathing was labored and he admitted being nervous, but Bill commanded the spotlight as he always did. He humbly shared the honor with his former colleagues and took stock of his life with a smile.
Life has been, how do I say this? Life has been incredibly good for Billy Bonds and his friends.
Ladies and gentlemen, the best there ever was, anchorman and Hall of Fame journalist Bill Bonds.
Another great honor came in 2010 when Bill was inducted into the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. In 2012, Bill put his hands in cement to be immortalized in Detroit. The casting is now part of Legends Plaza, the Detroit Historical Museum's equivalent to the Hollywood Walk of Fame. In 2009, Bill was front and center in an exhibit starring Detroit's classic TV personalities at the museum. It followed his career through the decades as the king of television news in Detroit.
The Bonds family has issued a statement tonight. For us, Bill was so much more than a face on TV, the talented anchorman. He was a wonderful husband and father who cared deeply about his children and his family. We will miss him greatly.
Goes on to say Bill had a great passion for the news business. More than anything, he loved bringing the news to the people of Detroit. He believed we were a better community if we were a well-informed community. We thank everyone for their thoughts and prayers during this difficult time.
Bill is survived by his wife Karen and his daughters Christine and Mary and his son John.
Our thoughts and prayers are certainly with them tonight.
We're going to continue to remember the life of anchorman Bill Bonds tonight.
Yeah, when we come back, we're going to talk to former Channel 7 reporter Cheryl Choden about her memories of Bill Bonds as well. We continue to remember the life now of Bill Bonds.
Joining us now, Cheryl Choden, former Channel 7 reporter. I came to Channel 7 in 1988 and was doing sports then. Right. Bill knew a lot about sports. Yeah. He thought he knew everything about sports. He didn't, but he knew most everything about news. And Cheryl, as a reporter working daily in the streets and with Bill and all the rest of us, you knew that, how well versed he was.
And we are better because of Bill. We are so much better because of him. I was saying earlier tonight, Mary Conway was texting me, we're heartbroken, but we're thankful. Yeah. So thankful that we got to work with him. He kept us on our toes. When you were out on a story, you needed to know exactly everything about that story because you didn't know what he would ask you at the end.
That's what Eric Smith said too.
And you know, he would put you in a spot, and you didn't want to be in that spot, so you would know everything, so you'd never get in that spot. I loved Bill. Bill was amazing. He was an amazing man.
How did he make you a better reporter? Was it just that probing, that questioning?
You know, I think it was just through almost osmosis. I mean, just to be around him. Bill knew everything about every story. He would read everything that he could. He would always tell us that he'd read every newspaper, every magazine, and he would tell us to do the same. He would tell us to go out and not to leave a stone unturned on the story because he was going to question us at the end.
Right, right.
Just to be around Bill, you know. I anchored with him. I co-anchored with him too, which was...
Tell us that story,
It's a story. It is. It's kind of a funny story,
Yes.
but I was so nervous because I was filling in for Diana that night or whatever, and I sat down, and my first time co-anchoring with Bill, I thought, whoa, pinch me, this is so exciting. He said, good evening, everybody. I'm Bill Bonds, and this is the lovely Cheryl Choden, and I love your blouse. So I kind of said, you know, thank you very much, and like, on to the news. Let's get on to the news.
Right.
But seriously, though, it's Bill, he left a legacy. He just taught us so much. And then we, in turn, can teach younger reporters and students. And
that's what you're doing right now,
And that is
Cheryl.
what I'm doing, too. I am doing that. But, you know, the who, what, where, when, and how, and then everything beyond that. For Bill.
Asking, you know, we saw in all the clips that we played of him asking the tough questions. I mean, people remember the mayor interview and the interview with the Senator Warren Hatch, excuse me, right. So, but I mean, I think he taught all of us that it's important to ask those tough questions.
And you know, it's funny, at the end of our story, when you're ready to say 7 Action News, Cheryl Choden, your heart would be a little fast when Bill was anchoring, because you knew that it wasn't over.
Right, of course.
And then he would ask you something about it, and you know, we would have the answer. And if we didn't have the answer, I'd say, Bill, that is a great question. We're trying to find that out right now. Awesome.
And then you'd go find it out.
And then you'd go find it out for
right
sure.
You would.
But I saw Bill recently. I was there when he got the Lifetime Achievement, and you know, Bill was just at the reunion. There was a Channel 7 reunion about a year ago. Remember that in September? Bill held court, basically. People lined up
to pay homage to the king.
Absolutely, I mean, to sit with Bill, have a picture taken with Bill, to say a few words with him. He was amazing, and you know, he and Karen, we'd be with them at times, and he was a great guy, and he was funny.
Yeah, he was funny.
He was very, very funny. He was very funny. But most importantly, he made us better.
Yeah. He did, you're right.
He taught us, and he made us better. Yeah. But I feel heartbroken.
Yeah, I know, we all do. Cheryl, thank you for dropping by.
Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you.
More on the life and times of Bill Bonds when we return. Continuing our coverage now, the passing of legendary anchorman Bill Bonds.
A number of years after he left Channel 7, he made a comeback of sorts to resume his trademark commentaries.
It was 1999, and he sat down with Channel 7 investigative reporter Shelley Smith for a very revealing interview.
You're laying people off, John.
Opinionated, smart, and gutsy.
The message is so obvious.
Bill Bonds. You either love him or you hate him, but you watch him. Sometimes just to see what he might say next.
What's it like for you to watch a newscast these days?
Painful, it hurts. I mean,
are we getting it right?
I would like to see more both street reporters and anchors place things in some kind of context.
What Bill calls context, others view as commentary. But his performance during the 1967 riots established him as the man to watch for news.
Oh yeah, I think it was the defining moment of my career.
A career that included stops in Los Angeles and New York, but he always came back home.
They can't stand the context!
He is Detroit's own bad boy. And like the city where a giant fist anchors downtown, Bill has attitude.
You've had a bad boy image. I mean, you challenged the mayor to a fight on the air.
I don't scare you, and you damn sure don't scare me. Now, how about you and me sparring a couple of rounds?
Well, I was drunk.
Okay.
I mean, I was high.
Are you proud of that?
It was great satire. It really is a marvelous piece of satire, and he knew that. It was poorly executed because I was oiled.
Alcohol. It's been Bill's nemesis, his weakness, and for years, his companion, even on the air.
I think a lot of people look at you and think that you had it all. You know, you were the $1 million man. How do you screw that up?
Well, you get into denial. You're pretty good at dancing. It's challenge that authority, get away with it, and I think ego. Booze is an insidious disease, you know, it killed my dad, killed my kid brother, killed my daughter.
Joni, a drunk driver, hit her head on and killed her.
How could you even pick up another drink after she was killed?
Kill the pain.
But night after night, he filled that anchor chair.
Were you a better anchor when you were drinking or when you were sober?
For a long time, I was convinced that I was more creative, wrote better, when I was angry. And the fuel that I used to rev up the anger was booze.
What about Channel 7's role in this? They took some heat for being an enabler. Were they tough enough on you?
Well, they were certainly more than fair. I mean, I should have been, you know. Don't forget that those of us with that X factor are very, very expert at manipulation.
In 1989, after 5 weeks in rehab, Bill was back, apologizing to all of us.
About 5 weeks ago, very frankly and very candidly, I had just about lost the will to live. The truth is that booze had taken over. This alcoholic was a mess, and my life was in a mess.
Nearly 1 million viewers tuned in that night. More Detroiters watched Bill than the first game of the World Series that year.
Has it, in a sort of strange way, contributed to your success?
Maybe obliquely. If a guy shows up and he's got the problem, they can empathize. They may not endorse or condone.
Or maybe they were tuning in to watch the train wreck.
Well, they got it.
And that is just the beginning of Bill's story. He also opened up about how he turned things around, and we'll have that part for you in just a few minutes.
We'll be right back.
You're watching 7 Action News at 10 on TV20 Detroit.
We continue to remember the life of former WXYZ Channel 7 anchorman Bill Bonds.
Bill passed away today at the age of 82 after suffering a heart attack at his home.
We are joined now by former Channel 7 Chief Meteorologist Jerry Hodak. Jerry, so good to talk to you tonight. Sad it's under these circumstances, certainly, but what can you tell us about some of your fondest memories of working with Bill?
There are so many that come rushing back on a night like this. He had so many strong characteristics that it's hard to pick out any one, but I would have to say, beyond anything else, that he was just a great communicator. He could look into that TV lens and talk to the person at home, grab their attention, and make them listen attentively for whatever he had to say. I've seen him sit and talk for as long as 8 minutes without going to any video or anything else, just communicating a story to the viewer at home. And I think that was obviously one of his stronger points.
Well, it certainly made it a challenge for the producers working with him, Jerry, because you could pretty much throw the rundown out, right, and forget about what's on the prompter. If Bill was ready to go, he'd go. And in some cases, as you told us earlier tonight, that also impacted you and your performance.
Well, yes, it did a number of times.
Yes.
And we had some discussions about it.
I bet you did.
You know, but Bill was drawing an audience, and how do you argue with that? And so there were a lot of people watching us. I generally was given a budget of 3 to 3.5 minutes to do the weather at 11 o'clock, and then we'd go right into the network news at 11:30. And on occasion, I got it as little as 30 seconds to give the weather because Bill was spending time discussing something that he felt needed to be said.
Yeah, Bill was Bill.
Exactly,
Yep.
Exactly. He also had a great personality and a great sense of humor as well, didn't he, Jerry?
Absolutely, and those are the things that I remember most tonight: his sense of humor and his warmth. I don't think many people saw that on TV because Bill wanted to challenge people when he was on with them and doing an interview. But he was very warm off the camera and up until the very end. I talked to him a couple of months ago, and we had a very warm conversation. We were good friends as well as colleagues, and those are the good thoughts that I hold with me tonight.
Yeah. So well said, Jerry. We miss you around here. I know you're doing well, and it's great to hear you tonight and to get your thoughts on the passing of this legend, our friend Bill Bonds.
Thanks for spending a few minutes with me. Good to be with you.
You too, Jerry. Thank you.
Meantime, Detroiters remembering Bill Bonds as someone they invited into their living room every evening to deliver the news.
7 Action News reporter Jane Park spoke with viewers and joins us live in downtown Detroit now. Jane.
Well, Dave, Joanne, so many well wishes here. Passionate, lively, opinionated, iconic. These are just some of the ways Detroiters and Channel 7 viewers describe one of their favorite longtime anchormen, Bill Bonds. They say he is a legend that will be very hard to replace.
A very passionate man, passionate about the city of Detroit and the people here.
He was just really cool to watch, you know. He brought a lot to Detroit.
Back when television was getting itself established, who were the original newscasters? Guys like Bill Bonds.
I met him once out in downtown Birmingham at a restaurant I used to work at, Fenici's. He was a really good guy.
He was going to emphasize probing beyond the ordinary. And sometimes I think people liked it, sometimes people didn't like it, but what he did was to create discussion around topics that were relevant to Detroit.
He was iconic. You know, to me, he really was iconic, you know. I used to watch him with my parents, like I said, my mom and dad.
I think he brought awareness to the city of Detroit. I think that he brought us together as a people, and not only African-American people, but Caucasian people, people of all walks of life. So I think that he brought us all together, and just for the good of the city.
Amiable, very personable, very friendly, always smiling, and he tried to present the news in a positive manner.
But he seemed to be a guy that was committed to journalism and certainly was a Detroit fixture.
He is a legacy for Detroit. Yeah, that's just going to be a great loss for Detroit.
We'll miss you, Bill Bonds!
Well, you heard it from them, somebody who not only influenced the way people consume local news, but also paved the way for future newscasters. The people of Detroit will miss Bill Bonds very dearly. We're live in Detroit. Jane Park, 7 Action News.
Yeah, certainly, Jane. Thank you. WXYZ.com is full of Bill Bonds memories. We have classic videos for you, fun to watch, a photo gallery, and on Facebook, we'd love to hear from you about your memories of Bill.
Been following Twitter tonight. Bill Bonds trending on Twitter tonight as well.
Not surprising.
Not surprised one bit over that. The king of all platforms.
That's right.
Bill Bonds, even in his sad passing tonight. We have a Detroit media personality on the phone with us tonight, another legend in this business, Dick Purton, joining us tonight. Dick.
Good evening, Dad.
Well, hello, David. Hi, Joanne.
Yeah, good to have you with us tonight. Dad, you know, you worked in this building. WXYZ Radio was upstairs. Bill Bonds was down here. You were upstairs. What are some of your memories that you have of him?
Well, you know, it's funny. I remember the newsroom, the television newsroom was just down the hall from us. And Joanne and Dave, you'd be amazed at how small the newsroom was at Channel 7. And those were the days, the glory days, with all those guys you've been talking about as the day has gone on here since Billy's heart attack became news. Under Phil Nye, that was the era that I remember the most, but it was a tiny newsroom just down the hall. You guys now downstairs, it's gigantic.
Yeah.
So it's amazing the things that came out of that newsroom, Billy, of course, being foremost. He was, as I perceived Billy, because I didn't work with him, everybody called him Billy that knew him, but I mean, he was a top-notch, passionate newsman, and you could you tell that, but he had that touch of showbiz in him. I loved the pompous act that he always put on with people, and you know he would act. Well, I remember the Pistons games.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And do you remember, if you were there, Dave or Joanne? He'd show up. He never wore his overcoat as people do. He wore it over his shoulders.
Right. And
yes, he did.
And the tie was off, and the collars would be up, and he was styling.
Oh yeah, he looked like at those Pistons games like an emperor who was surveying his court.
Yes.
And everybody noticed him, and that was the whole idea. Billy would wait until everybody was seated, and then he would come in, and you couldn't miss him. And there was so much about it. Was a little Ted Baxter in Billy, you know, in his probably a little bit on camera, because the camera loved him. They loved the blue eyes. He just came alive with the camera. And do you remember the little looks he would give the camera from time to time? It was that personal contact with the people at home that he had. He knew he had it, and he ran with it all the way. He was remarkable.
He connected with viewers because of those looks and his wit and his intelligence and everything else.
Yeah, just incredible. A legend in our time, never to be another like Bill Bonds, Dick.
Never be another one. He was the best. He was the king. As I used to do at the various banquets that I might MC, and Billy was there when I introduced Billy, or he'd come up and speak, or I'd say, Bill, you're the king. You've always been the king. You always will be the king.
And he probably always agreed with you, too.
Exactly right. Dick Purton, thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
All right,
Have a good
Dick
night.
Purton joining us tonight to talk about the passing of the legend, the iconic Bill Bonds.
And much more after the break. Now the rest of Bill Bond's story in his own words. After alcohol finally imploded Bill's career here at Channel 7, it forced him to deal with a problem that had been festering for years.
Here is part 2 of a revealing 1999 profile from Channel 7 investigative reporter Shelley Smith as we mark the passing of a legend.
There were no signs of trouble in the cherub-like face of 4-year-old Billy Bonds. He was an inquisitive, mischievous Irish boy from 12th Street who drove the nuns crazy.
I remember asking one day, why is everybody so mad at Judas? If it hadn't been for Judas, Jesus never would have had a job. And she said, well, that's just the way it is. And I was forever asking the question, why?
And Bill is still asking why, looking deep inside himself to discover why he let alcohol destroy his life.
You asked me what I thought when I see a show anchored. How in the hell did I blow it? I mean, why did I let the booze get to me? Hurt my family, hurt a lot of people like you at Channel 7. So
Bill hit rock bottom in 1994 when he was arrested for drunk driving in Orchard Lake.
If it hadn't have happened, I'd probably be dead.
The station sent Bill to another upscale rehab facility, this time in Atlanta, and filled with doctors trying to save their medical licenses. After 30 years together, WXYZ finally canned him.
You received a letter while you were in rehab?
Mm-hmm.
Is that how?
I didn't receive it. A counselor did and read it in front of 35 people. I left that day. And I left because of the way in which it was done. I felt betrayed.
Did you finish the program?
Well, I'd been there 5.5 months. They finished it for me.
Are you still drinking?
No, no. And I've never been happier.
Today, Bill says he tries to attend AA meetings every day. And for the first time in his life is taking medication for his manic depression.
I don't hide bottles. I don't spend hours sitting in a room in the dark thinking dark thoughts. The toughest thing to do when you're in it is to ask for help because you're not communicating with anyone but your dark side and your dark angels.
Bill's guardian angel through it all has been his bride, Karen. The two married in 1995.
She said, look, you got yourself into this thing. I love you, I support you, but and I'll give you everything I've got as long as you're willing to try to help yourself.
And he is.
And I'm up every morning at 4:30. I used to get home at 4:30. There's a big difference. Typewriter works. The question is, will the brain work?
He plunks out his commentaries on an old typewriter, still refusing to use a computer. And 3 times a week, he's back home at Channel 7, reinventing Bill Bonds.
You were such a force in the newsroom. I mean, you were not only an anchor, but you were a leader. Is it difficult to go into the station these days and not be able to run the show?
No, because I think I should. Are you listening, Scripps Howard? I mean, are you guys listening back there? I'm not afraid to say I'd love to anchor again. And I'd love to anchor Channel 7.
And like a true performer with a captive audience, Bill is auditioning one more time.
An Oscar here and an Emmy there. No business like show business.
There are, what, 11 million words in the English language? My favorite 5 are, good evening, I'm Bill Bonds.
And we loved hearing that night after night, right?
Oh, boy.
Oh,
I'm telling you. Yeah.
I think part of why people loved him so much, too, is because he had all the flaws, too.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know what I mean? He was a real person, fighting real battles and real demons and real things that people struggle with.
And he was a Detroit kid
Yeah.
who cared about Detroit, and that came across
Yeah, it did.
every single night into your living room. Yeah. You know, and he fought for the little guy. I mean, you know, he did.
He absolutely did.
That's Bonds. That's who he was.
Yeah, you're right.
And yes, to his last day, he felt he should be
Still
right here.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And that was a beautiful part of Billy, too.
Yeah, it was. More as we look back at his life and the legacy he's left behind when Action News returns.
Always wondered if it were.
We continue our coverage now as we look back at the life left behind by Bill Bonds.
Yeah, joined now by Tim Kiska, Detroit TV historian. We usually see Tim on election night.
Yeah.
Nothing to talk about here. Billy's the king, without question.
That's my projection. He is the king.
Yeah, you're right.
Wins in a landslide.
Right, exactly.
Does a lot of polling, but also 3 books on television and looked at Detroit and the history, and it starts, doesn't it, with Bill Bonds?
Well, yeah, he changed the business entirely. Before he got there, I mean, we had people like Jack Legoff and Dick Westerkamp who were excellent anchors, great newsmen, but Bill had some sort of sense of drama about him that nobody had ever seen before, and it was a true revelation to the viewers, and that really drew a lot of people.
And it drew a lot of coverage. There was a lot of coverage in the newspapers back then, a lot more than today about TV. I mean, it was a regular part of the newspapers was coverage of what TV was doing in town.
Bill had me on the front page a lot.
Yeah,
a lot more than I should have. Exactly, but that's it. I mean, it was something to write about because people cared about it.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, well, I'm telling it to you, I mean, TV is something that people care about in this town, so that's why we wrote about it.
Well, and he was out and about. I mean, we talked about all the games that he was at, the professional sports. You know, he had some homes away from home, you know, across southeast Michigan too. And sometimes trouble found Bill Bonds.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the thing about first of all, you always knew when he entered the room. Yeah. There was no question about that. And in terms of trouble, I think people kind of thought, well, give Bill Bonds a hard time and see where this lands us. Well, by the way, for some people, it was not a happy ending, as it were. So.
I said on Twitter tonight, as many of us did, you know, we don't think there'd ever be another Bill Bonds. You've said it tonight. Truly, there never will be another one.
No,
like
he happened to hit TV at a certain time when TV became, local TV, particularly in this town after 1967, after the 67 Civil War, became crucial to our the information world, and he was there as that grew up, and that's why. There never will be. There's going to be somebody different.
Yes.
But not like him.
But the audience has become so fragmented too.
Exactly.
It's not what it used to be. So.
Exactly.
Well, Tim, thank you.
Thanks
for your thoughts tonight. We
Thanks for the
appreciate
invite. Appreciate
it. I grew up watching Bill Bonds. You've said that too, right? I mean, all of us, or many of us, right? And I will never forget when I got married 21 years ago. I was working in Albany, New York at the time, and Bill made an appearance in my wedding video. Take a look.
Joanne, Eric, as you well know, legend like me, legend like your father, we're not used to going last, but in this case, obviously, there was a reason, because we've decided to hold the best until last. I only hope that Joanne, you and Eric are going to be as happy and as productive and as good intrinsically as your mom and dad. Joanne, I don't know Eric's mom and dad, but Gail and Dick, two of the finest people I know, and I believe strongly in genetics. Anyway, lots of love. Lots of luck, be good to one another, and have a pleasant, peaceful life. Bill Bonds reporting. Best to you.
He was so sweet. He could be so serious and be so funny and so sarcastic. And,
even at your wedding, Purton.
I know, how about that? And I didn't know him personally back then. Yeah. At that point, Art Vola put together the wedding video, Mr. kind of TV and radio, and knew everyone in the business, and he had Bill do that. So.
How did he get away? He wears a white sport coat and he gets away with it.
Yeah, he did get away.
If David and I showed up with a white sport coat, it would not be good.
No. But he could wear it well.
Yes,
yeah, and it works. Right.
All right. Well, thank you, Tim, for your thoughts again, as we said.
Thank you.
All right, we do want to take a quick break from our coverage right now to check our forecast.
Chris Edwards is in tonight. Chris?
Yeah, I'll shift gears just a little bit here and talk about our relatively quiet weather pattern. It's not changing very much. Millions of us in the Midwest are covered by this low gray cloud cover. And that's it. It's cloudy, and it's been persistent. However, it is mild. It's 43 here, 47 in Chicago. Notice the 50s. It's the middle of December at night, and we're talking 50s and 40s all the way up to the Canadian border. So this is unusually mild. This high pressure is controlling our weather. It's keeping us locked in the low gray clouds, and that's what we're going to have. We'll just throw in a little drizzle, we'll throw in a little fog, and move this forward through the day tomorrow with pretty much the same story. Now, I'm going to stop this the morning rush hour on Monday. At that point, we're still dry except for a little drizzle. There could be some dense fog as we're back to work and back to school Monday morning, but this is the system that moved on to the west coast, and it will eventually get in here, probably not until the evening rush hour is passed on Monday. So it's mainly Monday night and then into Tuesday that we get some rain. You see there the high and low for today, 44 and 33, well above average for this date. At this moment, it's still 43 at the airport with a westerly wind at 12. Sun sets tomorrow at 5:02, a minute later than it did today. But we've got clouds and drizzle and fog tonight, 39, 48 for tomorrow, with the morning fog lifting, and then the rest of the 10-day forecast shows Monday 50, close to it on Tuesday. There's our rain on Tuesday. It looks like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we cool off a little bit. And as we get to 2 days before Christmas, temperatures stay cool. No big storm systems. I just have to say quickly, it's a pleasure and an honor to reduce this weathercast in honor of Bill Bonds. Stay with us.
You watch Channel 7, you know Bill Bonds was famous for his commentaries.
He could put into words what a lot of us were thinking. He delivered his last commentary here in 2008 for the station's 60th anniversary.
Here's a look back tonight as we give Bill Bonds the final word.
We've heard an awful lot about the energy crisis we have, and I have always believed that optimism and hope were the twin fuels that made this democracy run right. For as long as I can remember, Americans have always been kind of an optimistic people and a hopeful people, a pretty happy nation and glad to be the way we are. This may be the last television news that I ever get to anchor, so I'm going to take a shot at one little commentary here. Like you, I love America, love being an American, but you know something? More and more frequently, I don't trust my government. I don't believe what some of our elected leaders are telling us from time to time. This country and this America we so love and the rest of the world so desperately needs is indeed in deep, deep crisis. And if we're going to successfully maneuver our way through these nightmares, I think we're going to have to play a little hardball with these two political parties of ours, the people who control them. We've got to find a way to tell these Democrats, these Republicans, these liberals and these conservatives, hey, look, guys and gals, before you were a Republican, before you were a Democrat or a liberal or a conservative, you were first an American. I believe there are a lot of Americans who are now convinced that you kind of have forgotten that. I think a lot of Americans believe that maybe you're just more loyal to your parties than you are to your country and your fellow citizens. And maybe, just maybe, the change we really need this election is to somehow dump these two parties and form a new one. Because whatever it is you guys and gals are doing, it ain't working anymore. And that's kind of scary. Try to imagine what the world would be like Friday morning if we all woke up and there was no America. Now, I know somebody at home is saying, come on, Billy, this is America. That can't happen. Can't happen? What happened to the Detroit that was the industrial center and with a world population of 1.7 million people? And where have all the car companies gone? Think about this. If you don't change, you don't adjust, you go bye-bye. Talk that over with the next dinosaur you see driving a Nash, a Hudson, or a Packard automobile. Of course, you can't do that. They've all disappeared.
2008, words that still ring true in many respects today.
I think so.
Bill Bonds, right there.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We have a special hour-long edition of 7 Action News at 11 over on Channel 7. Have a great night.